What's up, guys? It's Will, and I'm back again for another short update and to talk a little bit about my next project. Since my last since the last video that I posted, I haven't been doing a whole lot of different things. I've been mostly focused on picking away at the Piper Cub, which you can see I've made quite a bit of progress on. And I've definitely gotten to a point where it's time to park it for a little bit. This group build lasts until November, so I definitely don't have to be in any hurry. And that's a good thing because, quite frankly, I'm a bit worn out on this little yellow bird. I'm not gonna talk a whole lot about it right now because I'll make a video about it when I'm done, and all in due time. But let's just say that this has been a pretty frustrating experience working on this kit. Ravel, you got some splaining to do, guys. Anyhow, the other thing that I've been doing to try and sort of curb my frustration with the cubby is I've continued to do scratch work on my P40 and working on my pre-shading techniques and practicing with my brand new airbrush, which I have here. This is my new Iwata HPTH. Big shout out to Gil Mondragon for giving me some guidance on that. I don't know if you noticed, but that's a trigger style airbrush, and it is much easier for me in every which way. But it also got me into the double action category finally, so that's been good. And not only have I been practicing my pre-shading, but I've been working on my German camouflage patterns. You can see on the little P40 here. There you go. Maybe you can kind of see that. Yeah. And on the other side, it's a little bit different as I've been sort of working on my technique. So yeah, that's key to be able to do that modeled pattern for German aircraft. And that is what my next project is all about. And that's going to be the Tamiya 148th me262. And in fact, I have decided that I'm going to build it for Martin's For the Love of Freddy group build. Anyway, there's the box. There it is. I'll open it real quick so that, as is the tradition with group builds, you can see that I have not started it. Basically all I've done so far is take all the sprues out of the bag, and I've been studying the instructions and just getting ready. I'm pretty excited about it. Anyway, that's the deal there. I am super excited about building this kit. This will be my third Tamiya aircraft kit. I also built the Spitfire in 148th and the 132nd Mustang, and I will occasionally bitch about Tamiya over-engineering things because they do sometimes. They sometimes create fits that are tighter than they need to be, and that can be a hassle. But overall, they're just a joy to work on. I mean, especially compared to something like this Ravel kit. It's not just the difference in the quality of fit, but just the overall engineering strategies, the way that parts are designed to assemble. With this Ravel kit, I've been fighting sink marks and ejector pin witnesses the whole time. That stuff that's just silly, and you don't find that in a Tamiya kit. So call me a Tamiya snob if you want to, but there's a fine line between things that make you practice your modeling skills and things that are just silly. So anyway, in addition to the 262 kit, I also have some goodies here. I got the Edward resin wheel set, which looks beautiful. I've got the Edward masks, which are fantastic. If you've ever masked a cockpit canopy by hand, you know what a hassle that is. And I've also got the photo etch kit from Edward, which is really extensive. I was surprised. It includes both the interior and the exterior, and I was originally going to just build this thing up with the canopy closed and focus on the paint scheme. But there's so much good detail with both the kit and the photo etch that I think I'm maybe going to have the canopy open and just really go all out on the detail with the cockpit and with the wheel wells. I don't think I'm going to do the guns. I think I want to just keep that all closed up because I like the lines of the aircraft, with everything buttoned up. So I think it's going to be good, and I'm excited about that. Okay, now a little bit about the aircraft I'm going to be representing. One of my favorite things about this is being able to pick a historical subject, especially one that's got some real human interest behind it, and do the research and actually create something that is a historical artifact as much as a piece of art, hopefully. And so what I'm going to be building is the me262 designated White 3. Now, you may be saying, well, what's the big deal? White 3 is the one on the box. You can see it right there. Well, yes and no. What you have to realize is that German pilots talked about their aircraft as being White 3 or Yellow 14 or Yellow 2, but that didn't mean it was the only one of that description. They could exist. There could be a yellow 14 in more than one squadron, and that was the case with the me262 called White 3. The one that's on the Tamiya box was actually attached to JG7, which is the most well-known me262 squadron, and that one was flown by a pilot named Hans Guido Mudke. And his claim to fame, or infamy maybe, I don't know, is that he professed to be the first guy to actually break the sound barrier. He claimed that he did it in a 262. And of course, there was lots of skepticism about that. But anyway, that was his story. The one that I'm doing is actually the White 3 that was flown by a pilot named Franz Stiegler. Now, Franz Stiegler has a very, very interesting story, and it's been well documented in a book called A Higher Call. And I'm not going to spoil it for you if you don't know the story. I would encourage you to read it. It's a fantastic story of heroism in wartime and bravery and the nobility that sometimes comes out of conflict. And I think it's just a good historical read as well. But at any rate, after the main events of that book took place, this would be spring of 1945. General Adolf Galland decided to form a squadron of Germany's remaining ace fighter pilots, specifically to fly the me262 in what was ostensibly a last-ditch effort to defend the skies over Germany. Now, I kind of have a pet theory about this. I think Galland knew that Germany's days were numbered and that he wanted to maybe collect and preserve these fighter pilots. But that's just my theory. I'm not a historian, and I don't have any real good basis for that. But at any rate, he decided to call the squadron Jagdverband 44, which basically means Band of Hunters. And that's exactly what JV-44 was. But they were a ragtag outfit. I mean, they barely had any aircraft, they had no supplies, and they were based on a bombed-out airfield near Munich that was under a constant threat of attack, and they were basically living hand to mouth on a day-to-day basis. But Franz Stiegler had become friends with Galland throughout the course of the war, and when he heard about what he was doing, he immediately contacted him and said, "Look, I want to come and fly with you guys." And Galland said, "Well, we don't have enough planes for even the pilots that we have. So you can join us, but you have to bring your own jet." So, and I think this is one of the greatest little stories that I've ever read about in wartime. Stiegler put on his best dress uniform and put his letter from Galland in his pocket and drove down to the me262 factory and found the guy who was in charge and basically sweet-talked the guy into handing over the keys to the only complete and flyable jet that was at the facility. It was just sitting there on the tarmac, and everything around it had been destroyed, and it was just sitting there, brand new, but with no paint. And somehow he managed to convince this guy that he should let him fly out of there with that airplane. And that's exactly what he did. He took it to the airfield where JV-44 was headquartered, and within a couple of days, as he describes in the book, they had the ground crew had sprayed it with wavy green camouflage. And other than it being White 3, that's about all we really know. This is sort of an artist's depiction of it. But there aren't any photographs of the aircraft that exist. There are photographs of other JV-44 aircraft to kind of go off of, but this plane was put in service in late March or early April of 1945, and it only survived for about a month. And that's part of the real story here. While Stiegler was attached to JV-44 for that short period of time, he was an instructor, and he kind of had his own plane, being this one. Although, the planes got passed around from pilot to pilot because they had so few of them. But there was a kid there, a young lieutenant, who had been allowed to join the group, and he had begged Stiegler to release him and let him fly combat. And Stiegler knew he was green and likely to get killed, and so he basically just kept the kid grounded. And even though he was bugging him every day to let him fly. And during that period of time, in late April, Galland needed to go up for a mission, and he took White 3. And this is part of why White 3 is often thought to have been Galland's airplane. But it really wasn't. It was Stiegler's more than anybody's, and Galland only flew it a few times. But on this particular day, he got shot up by an American P-47, and the right engine got blown up, and Galland actually took shrapnel through the fuselage in his right knee, and was, in spite of all that, was able to land the aircraft intact under attack, which was amazing in and of itself. And the ground crew went to work as soon as possible, and you could change the engines on an me262 in about half an hour. And within a day or so, they had the aircraft repaired and flyable. And it was at that point that this young lieutenant finally convinced Franz Stiegler to allow him to fly the plane. Stiegler tells about it in the book, and he says, I just felt so sorry for the kid. I wanted him to be able to end the war with at least one combat mission. And this particular day, there was little likelihood that he was actually going to be, shot at. And so I finally relented and allowed him to go up in the plane. Now, obviously, I'm sort of paraphrasing all that, but at any rate, he finally let the kid take White 3. And whether it was because of the newly repaired engine malfunctioning or the kid being inexperienced and making a mistake, we'll never know. But within about 30 seconds after takeoff, he lost control and crashed the plane. And, Stiegler was watching all this, and he saw the smoke and heard the explosion, and immediately went to the crash site. And the farmers there had already pulled the kid out of the plane, but he was fatally wounded, and he died in Franz Stiegler's arms. And that was something that would haunt Stiegler for the rest of his days, because he just tried to do the right thing by the kid, and it felt like he ended up getting him killed. So a sad ending to White 3, but still, a compelling story of war. And so basically, what I'm going to do is attempt to represent the aircraft as it would have been the morning of its destruction, with the right side engine having been repaired, the damage to the fuselage having been repaired, and so forth. So hopefully I can pull that off. Now, here's kind of an interesting postscript to that story. The day after the crash, the SS actually came to arrest General Galland, because he had been in open defiance of Goering and the Nazi Party leadership for a long time. And actually, this was true of a number of Luftwaffe pilots. In fact, Stiegler himself barely escaped the Gestapo, because he had long been, at least very quietly, in defiance of the Nazi Party. And the fact is that most Luftwaffe pilots were not members of the party. So, at any rate, Galland was laid up with a cast on his right leg, and that's the only reason that the SS decided not to take him. And the war ended the day after that. So, kind of the punchline to the story there. So, at any rate, that's what I'm going to do for the Freddy build. I'm going to get started on it today. I've finally got everything gathered up and ready to go, and I think I've got a good story, and I think it's going to be a fun project. So, I appreciate you guys checking it out, and I hope you'll stay tuned for the next update. All right? Take care. Much love, guys.